For 2000 years, the Celtic people believed that on the night before their new year, that's October 31st, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead blurred. They celebrated Samhain, built huge sacred bonfires, burned crops, sacrificed animals, and dressed up in scary costumes to ward off ghosts and tell each other's fortunes. And next week, that's what we do, celebrate Halloween. Welcome to Kaleidoscope, where we are positive, daring, different. On the show today, Sri Lanka's plans to tackle climate change, a catering Hall of Famers inspiring story, and the wonder of Sri Lanka's landscape. Did you know that Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn? Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and like us for more. And a great big thank you to our wonderful partners on the show, Srilanka Life, CDB, and The Daily Morning.
CDB Hybrid Leasing. Enjoy exclusive interest rate and much more for hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and EV vehicles.
Looking forward to the week that was on CDB Snapshot. Sri Lanka's overall inflation rate decreases to negative 0.2% in September compared to 1.1% in August. During the first 9 months of 2024, Sri Lanka earns over $1 billion in tea exports. According to the World Bank, Sri Lanka's untapped export potential is about $10 billion annually and could create over 142,000 jobs. Sri Lanka's motorsport prodigy, Yevan David, who's been on the show before, makes history by winning the Euroformula World Championship. The world's first permanent AI art museum, named Dataland, is set to open in Los Angeles next year. A long-lost copy of the US Constitution found in a filing cabinet sells at an auction for $9 million. A woman in the UK finally hears back about a job application 48 years after she applied.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
This is Srilanka Life News Capsule. Welcome. Sri Lanka's National Adaptation Plan for Climate Change is from 2016 to 2025, covering adaptation at 2 levels based on the needs of 9 key vulnerable sectors and cross-cutting national needs of adaptation. With me today is Dr. Sonali Senaratna Sellamuthu, the Global Green Growth Institute's country representative to Sri Lanka and the team lead for the National Adaptation Plan Readiness Support Project. GTGI is a treaty-based international intergovernmental organization of which Sri Lanka became a member in 2019. What exactly is a National Climate Adaptation Plan?
These are plans that are put together at a national level by countries to support them in addressing the adverse impacts of climate change. And these are done basically at the medium and long term, looking at recommendations and seeing how the country can adapt both in the medium and long term. These are key policy instruments that countries put together. Actually, this was set up by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and was initiated in 2010. This is something that is updated usually on a rolling basis.
So does Sri Lanka have one?
Yes, in fact, Sri Lanka does have one, and Sri Lanka was actually one of the pioneering countries that initially developed its National Adaptation Plan. We call them the NAPs. So the current NAP is running from 2016 when it was launched to 2025. Usually the NAPs are updated on a rolling basis, and we are currently supporting the government of Sri Lanka in revising the National Adaptation Plan for Sri Lanka. And this is running from, will cover the period of 2025 to 2034.
What are the salient points in this plan?
Savi, there are several key points that are covered in these plans. The first is we cover what is called horizontal adaptation planning, which means that we cover different sectors that are specifically vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So for example, in Sri Lanka, we are covering 13 sectors, and these are wide ranging. So they sort of range from things like agriculture, fisheries, livestock, biodiversity, all the way to things like human settlement, health, transport, energy, industry. So basically we cover this range of sectors because the impacts of climate change are actually different in terms of how they interact with each of these sectors. And in addition to that, we are also looking at, for the first time, developing provincial level adaptation plans. So there's going to be 9 provincial level adaptation plans that are also developed that take on board consultations that we have done at the provincial level, bringing on board more local stakeholders into the picture. In addition to that, the National Adaptation Plan of Sri Lanka, the updated one, is also going to be bringing on board gender and social action plan, which will align with this, understanding again that in terms of gender and social inclusion, climate change impacts differ in terms of how they impact different community groups, particularly different marginalized vulnerable groups. So the idea is to ensure that gender and social inclusion is also mainstream throughout the entire plan when we think of all the different sectors, and also when we think of not just national level but also provincial level.
And now here's our market sketch for this week. At the Colombo Stock Exchange, prices continue to remain firm, with the all share price index moving towards the one-year high of 12,500. Saudi Arabia's crude oil exports dropped, while Russia's crude oil exports hit a 4-month high, and US crude oil inventories continued to climb, leaving oil prices trading between $72 and $75 per barrel. Gold prices surged to an all-time record high of $2,750 per ounce as conflicts in the Middle East and uncertainty surrounding the upcoming US election spurred demand for safe haven assets. The Comedy Wildlife Photography Awards 2024 has open submissions, and here are some of the funniest we've seen so far. Have you heard of the village with no men? It's called Umoja in Kenya. It's an all-female community of women survivors of gender-based violence. Women and children make up the families in the village, but male children can live in Umoja only until they turn 18. He was a chef who pursued a dream of starting his own business. Tony Boharan opened the doors of Raffles Consolidated in 1999, and having started as a partnership with just one employee, 25 years later, he feeds over 100,000 people daily with a team of over 600 and has over 1,000 partnerships under his cloche. Given that he's a household name in food, I hopped on over to Raffles Kitchens to find out more from Tony. How did all this start and what was your inspiration?
25 years ago, I was an employee, and then one day I thought, okay, why I do for others rather than doing it for myself. So then I left my job and started Raffles. I just started with one guy, and now here we are after 25 years with having more than 600 employees with me.
What were your beginnings like? When did you realize you would like to do cooking?
Even my cookbook I have dedicated to my mom. She's a very good cook. So when she starts cooking in the morning and I go and watch, and I'm the first to taste and say, Mom, it is okay, it's good or bad or whatever, my comments. I think that was there in me. I didn't realize it till late. And it so happened one day I saw an advertisement in the papers for hotel school, calling for applications. So I went in, I applied for the front office operations course. Then I saw how the cooks were running around and doing their training part in the kitchen. So the next was in the kitchen training, and that is where it all blossomed, So I even didn't know that I had these skills in me.
So in running Raffles for 25 years, what has been your biggest challenge?
Maintaining quality and standards is the biggest challenge. And for there you need people, you need trained people. I had an institute as well to train people. And to tell you the fact, I don't have any qualified chefs working for me. All the chefs whom I have trained myself because I'm a qualified chef. So look after them, train them, and teach them, the quality and the standards. They'll keep you going.
So you have your own Tony's cookbook, a collection of your own recipes. What's special in that book?
How it all happened was like, my clients, especially the ladies, they keep calling me and asking for recipes. So I thought one day, okay, I will start collecting my recipes and then publish it someday. So it happened in 2018, and then I published it.
So Tan, your son is your CEO and executive director. How does it feel bringing the family into the business and working with family?
Even though he's my son, I consider him as an employee, and he's qualified in his accountancy. He got his master's in accountancy. So I thought, good thing is my forte is cooking, and his forte is accounts. So I thought maybe blend together and let him run the financial management part of it, and then I look into the operations. So that is how it all started. And he's very fond of cooking as well. Sometimes he cooks better than me.
100,000 meals a day. How does that work out in arithmetics? How do you do 100,000 meals a day?
We have different segments of catering, like we went to industrial catering, we went to banquet catering, we went to outdoor, plus we have cafes and restaurants. So all in all, I would say it comes to about 100,000 meals if you look at breakfast, lunch and dinner. We went to mass catering where we cater into factories. So that is where the numbers come in.
What is your most memorable experience in these 25 years?
I'm not ashamed to tell you this, but the beginning, when we started with just two guys, myself and another guy. We rented a van, I was the driver, I was the purchasing manager, I was the cook, and then in the evening I become the manager, go to the function, deliver the goods, take care of the service. Once it's done, I drive back the guys back home, and it was challenging, but it was amazing.
What are your dreams for the future of Raffles?
Well, after 25 years, I'm happy to say that, I'm planning to go public very soon, and we will announce our IPO in time to come. So let the public also have a share of Raffles.
So good luck, Tony.
Thank you,
For the
Savithri.
next 25 and more.
Thank you very much.
Behind me here is the rock sister of Sigiriya, with a history that apparently dates back to maybe the 1st or the 2nd century BC, Pidurangala.
Pidurangala is a 200-meter tall massive rock formation located a few kilometers north of Sigiriya. After King Kashyapa killed his father to get to the throne, even though the rightful heir was his brother, fearing retaliation, he realized he needed a place to hide. He found Sigiriya, a cave monastery for Buddhist monks. He relocated the monks from Sigiriya to Pidurangala. But there is another story that monks were already in residence from the 1st century BC in Pidurangala. But whatever the story, Pidurangala is a gem and in fact rivals Sigiriya when it comes to spectacular views both at sunrise and sunset. And you get to see Sigiriya at the same height. The hike takes about 45 minutes. Don't forget to cover shoulders and knees and remove your shoes at the temple site. The path to the top has man-made steps until you reach the cave temple with its 30-foot reclining Buddha and yet another spectacular view. From this point, the hike is a challenge, finding your own path over some very large rocks and boulders, some of which are quite loose. The last bit of the climb is through a narrow gap. Only one person goes through at a time and can cause quite a traffic jam. However, once you get through that, the world is your oyster. Ready that costume for Halloween. We'll see you next week.